Hay called him Dracula, a name that sends a shiver down the spine. But before he became a legend of vampires and the undead, Vlad III of Wallachia was a real man, a prince, a warrior, and a monster of flesh and blood. In the shadowed forests of medieval Eastern Europe, a man was forged by betrayal, bloodshed, and an unquenchable thirst for vengeance. His enemies knew him not as a mere ruler, but as an architect of terror. To cross Vlad the Impaler was to invite a death, so horrifying it would be whispered about for centuries. This is not the story of fiction. This is not Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is the true tale of Vlad the Impaler, a man whose blood-soaked legacy still stains the pages of history. A man whose cruelty shaped a myth that refuses to die. Tonight, we descend into the heart of darkness. We journey back to a time when fear ruled the land, and a single man dared to crown himself king of the damned. The year was 1431. In the rugged land of Transylvania, a place of towering mountains and endless forests, a boy was born. His name was Vlad. His father, Vlad II, was no ordinary man. He bore the title Dracula, meaning the dragon, having sworn loyalty to the secretive Order of the Dragon, a society founded to defend Christendom against the growing might of the Ottoman Empire. From his earliest days, Vlad's world was one of betrayal, blood, and political intrigue. The lands he would one day rule, Wallachia, were a crossroads of empires, squeezed between the Catholic West and the Islamic East. A land where survival demanded ruthlessness. When Vlad was just a young boy, he and his brother Radu were sent as hostages to the Ottoman Sultan, Murad II, a chilling tradition meant to ensure their father's loyalty. For years, Vlad languished in a foreign court, surrounded by enemies, watched constantly, subjected to humiliation and perhaps worse. It was here, some historians believe, that the seeds of his cruelty were sown. Imagine a child torn from his home, held captive in a world of strange languages and harsher punishments. A child learning that trust was an illusion, and that power was the only thing that mattered. As he grew, Vlad watched the Ottomans' methods of fear and discipline. He learned the cold art of intimidation. And deep within his heart, a fire was lit, a fire that would one day consume anyone who dared cross him. Vlad would return home, but he would not come back as a boy. He would return as a viper, poised to strike. In 1448, at the tender age of 17, Vlad seized the throne of Wallachia for the first time. His father's death had left the land in chaos, a festering battlefield of rival families and foreign invaders. Vlad's rule was immediately contested. Betrayal lurked around every corner. Allies turned into enemies with the flick of a dagger. But Vlad had learned well in captivity. He trusted no one. To secure his power, he turned to methods few dared even whisper about. Those suspected of plotting against him, boyars, merchants, even nobles, were rounded up. Some were tortured. Some were executed. Others faced a fate even more gruesome, impalement. Vlad believed that mercy was weakness. That fear was the true foundation of power. And so he baptized his throne in blood. The fields outside his capital of Targovist began to resemble a grotesque forest of the dead, bodies skewered on tall wooden stakes, left to rot under the sun. To his enemies, Vlad was not just a ruler. He was a harbinger of death. But to the common folk, crushed by years of war and lawlessness, he became something else. A grim protector, a leader whose cruelty offered a twisted form of order. In Wallachia, it was better to fear your prince than to be slaughtered by your neighbor. And Vlad was very good at being feared. Of all the horrors attributed to Vlad, none is more infamous than the art of impalement. It was a form of execution so gruesome, so agonizing, that to witness it was to stare directly into the mouth of hell. A sharpened wooden stake was driven through the body, often carefully so as not to pierce vital organs, allowing the victim to live for hours, even days, in unimaginable pain. The stake was then planted upright, hoisting the writhing, dying victim into the air. Vlad did not invent this method, but he perfected it, turned it into an art of terror, He ordered entire forests of stakes, fields stretching beyond the horizon, each carrying a human corpse. Travelers would speak of riding for miles through the impaled, the dead, and the dying, a spectacle so terrifying that even seasoned Ottoman warriors recoiled in horror. It was not merely cruelty. It was psychology. Fear was a weapon, and Vlad wielded it with the precision of a master. His message was clear. Betray me, and your suffering will be eternal. And the people of Wallachia learned to listen. But Vlad's blood-soaked grip on Wallachia was constantly under siege. His greatest threat came not from within, but from the east. The mighty Ottoman Empire, ever hungry for conquest. Vlad had no love for his former captors. When Sultan Mehmed II demanded tribute, a humiliating annual tax, Vlad refused. And he did more than refuse. In a sudden onslaught, he crossed the Danube River and laid waste to Ottoman territories, burning villages, slaughtering soldiers, and impaling thousands. It was a declaration of war against an empire that dwarfed his own tiny kingdom. Yet Vlad fought not like a noble knight, but like a phantom of the forests, ambushing columns, poisoning wells, sending plagues into enemy camps. To fight Vlad the Impaler was to fight terror itself. In the summer of 1462, Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, led an army of over 100,000 men into Wallachia. Facing annihilation, Vlad did the unthinkable. Under the cover of darkness, he led a small force deep into the Ottoman camp. His goal was audacious: assassinate the Sultan himself. Torches blazed in the night as Wallachian riders, painted in deathly white, descended like specters. Chaos exploded. Tents were set ablaze. Soldiers were cut down in their sleep. Screams tore through the darkness. Vlad carved a path of destruction, coming within a hair's breadth of Mehmed's own tent, before finally withdrawing into the night. Though he failed to kill the Sultan, the message was clear. Wallachia would not fall easily. After the night attack, Mehmed advanced toward Targovist, Vlad's capital. What he found shattered even the hardened conqueror's nerves. Stretching for miles before the city walls was a landscape of death. 20,000 corpses impaled in grotesque poses, the young and the old, the soldier and the civilian alike. The stench of rot was overwhelming. The sight was maddening. The Sultan's army, despite its size, hesitated. Fear gripped them. Doubt gnawed at them. Mehmed chose to retreat, unwilling to lose more men to a ghostly enemy who ruled not with strength, but with terror. But Vlad's enemies were not only foreign. Betrayal lurked within his own people. His brother, Radu the Handsome, once his fellow hostage, now fought for the Ottomans. Radu's charm and promises of mercy won over the Wallachian nobles. Vlad, isolated and abandoned, was forced to flee. Seeking refuge with the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus, Vlad was instead arrested and thrown into prison. He would spend over a decade in captivity. A prince who had once commanded armies, reduced to a forgotten prisoner. Yet even locked away, his legend grew, fueled by horror stories and foreign pamphlets. To his enemies, he became the very incarnation of evil. To his admirers, he became a symbol of defiance. In 1476, Vlad was finally released. He returned to Wallachia one last time, a land ravaged by war, a people weary and broken. For a brief, flickering moment, he reclaimed his throne. But the winds of fate had turned against him. Later that same year, Vlad was ambushed and killed in battle, his army crushed, his body left mutilated. His enemies beheaded him and sent his head, preserved in honey, to the Ottoman Sultan as a trophy. His body was buried in an unmarked grave. Some say he rests at Snagov Monastery, hidden away on a lonely island. Others claim his true resting place has never been found. Vlad the Impaler had vanished into myth, a man swallowed by his own monstrous legend. Centuries later, a new kind of immortality awaited Vlad. In 1897, Irish author Bram Stoker published Dracula, a novel about an undead count who preyed upon the living. Though Stoker never traveled to Wallachia, he borrowed heavily from stories of Vlad's cruelty. The name Dracula, meaning son of the dragon, was lifted from Vlad's own title. But the vampire of fiction was only a pale shadow of the real monster. Vlad did not drink blood to survive. He spilled it to rule. His reign of terror was not confined to imagination. It was carved into the flesh and bones of history. Today, in the misty mountains of Romania, tales of Vlad the Impaler still echo among the ancient stones. Tourists flock to the so-called Dracula's castle at Bran, though Vlad likely never lived there. His true legacy lies not in Gothic horror stories, but in the broken crosses, the abandoned fields, and the blood-drenched chronicles of his time. He was not a vampire. He was worse. A man forged in cruelty who ruled through terror, and who would rather be feared in hell than forgotten in history. Vlad the Impaler. Dracula, the son of the dragon. His story reminds us that sometimes the real monsters are all too human.